is on tackling brand safety and sustainability for emerging channels. Let me tell you best practices for brand safety and suitability in emerging channels. This panel delved deeper with practical case studies and examples of what can be done to keep the brands relevant and safe as well. The rise of social media platforms means a growing medium of media channels available to consumers and marketers as well, while more traditional media channels such as print, television, and no point of sale continues to serve brands well. In today's landscape, it's really important for the brands to stay up to date with new and emerging media channels as well, to optimize the use of traditional channels. So achieving this can be both difficult and time-consuming as well. Well, for this, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Jolene Fernandes Solanki, Chief Operating Officer, Madison Media Ultra. Please welcome Ms. Jolene. Would like to take the honor to invite Sujay, Head of Digital Marketing, L'Oreal. Please welcome Sujay. We have Mr. Himanshu Sirohi, Head of Digital Marketing, Apollo 24/7. Please welcome Mr. Sirohi. We have Ms. Sheena Kapoor, Head Marketing, Corporate Communications and CSR, ICICI Lombard. Please welcome Ms. Sheena. And to chair this session, we have Mr. Sairam Ranganathan, National Head, Digital Services, Wavemaker India. Please welcome.
Thank you so much. We were just discussing before we stepped in. This is like, as Sujay was saying, that this is like the history class at the end of the school, and we are the ones who are keeping some of the people here from the bar. So what we will try to do, thank you so much for that. Making it even more easier, no pressure. What we will try to do is that we will try to address the key things on the topic which has been given, and we'll try to end it earlier, and if there are any questions, happy to take them in the end. Thank you so much. I'll first start, Himanshu, with you. If you can just throw some light on what are some of the emerging channels that you've been exposed to as part of the work that you do with your brands, and post you, then Sujay and Jolene can share their experience on this.
Sure. So, emerging channels, right? When you talk about that, I think maybe let's take a step back and understand how a marketer probably delivers content, whether it is paid, organic, or any of those mediums. Typically what happens is, typically you used to create content which used to be created for the masses earlier, back in the 90s and earlier. Then we gradually moved on from one-to-many to probably one-to-one, wherein there were intelligent cohorts, segments that were created. A lot of content was personalized, and then kind of it was an era of one-to-one content. Gradually, I think all of us have moved from one-to-one, we have moved to one-to-one-to-one, wherein a brand typically creates an asset or a platform, and typically customers kind of play with it. ChatGPT being one of them, and then there are different kind of assets wherein a customer kind of plays with whatever models a brand creates on different data sets, and they create their own iterations of content. So probably emerging channels for now would be maybe Instagram. Maybe 5 years back it was an emerging channel. Telegram is a big emerging channel right now. 3 years back, WABA, WhatsApp for Business, was a big emerging channel. Programmatic probably 5 years back was a big emerging channel. Lately I think emerging channels would be wherein users will themselves create a lot of content and will themselves play with it. Now, responsibility for a brand, one is you probably as a brand were used to managing channels. Now you would be used to managing those emerging channels wherein users have created a lot of engaging content, and as a brand your responsibility is to sit on top of that content, kind of manage your entire brand safety, brand image, brand suitability, and 10 different factors. So I think that's where we are headed, from pure emerging channels or pure channels to probably channels wherein there's a lot of user generated content, some bit that you have done using your current ecosystems, and then probably a lot of users playing around and you as a brand riding on top of all those channels or those data points and managing those channels for you.
Great. Essentially, you're saying we've evolved from one to many to one, and to one to one to one. And it's only become complex, and that sort of leads me to an interesting question, which is, Sujay, in your experiences, how are you, like, what are some of the things, particularly from a brand safety perspective, any guidelines or playbook that you have? What are some of the things that have worked for you, not worked for you? If you can just help us understand that.
Thanks for the question. I think before I answer that question, I think this entire point of brand safety, it's very much there for the last decade or so. It's just that in the last couple of years, it has taken up pace. And also, like in the backstage when we were discussing also, is that there are these top 20, 30, 50 brands in the country who are taking it very seriously. Coming back to the point is that what we are doing probably and where we are headed towards. So there is a two-pronged strategy. One is when it comes to the brand safety, I think the guidelines and principles more or less are the same for most of the big brands. So whether it is in terms of ad fraud, whether it is in terms of the entire safety quotient, like where your content is appearing, whether it is violence, war, nudity, all those pieces. So these are like basic hygienes and layers. I think one thing which we are also looking at is the brand suitability point of view, because I think the context of a content defines it a lot, because you might have the best of the intent as a brand to tell your brand story, but where that content is appearing, it might be safe also, but the context is very, very different. So maybe not by taking our example, imagine, and this is like a real life example I'm saying, because I used to work for a QSR brand. Imagine you are putting up a ad of a 1+1 free around a news story which is about famine. It's insensitive. So it might be safe, it might cover everything. So that's why I think brands are also looking at a situation where there are these basic guidelines of fraud and everything. And then there are very brand specific things which define. So if there are certain principles which are very close to the brand ethos, then definitely we look into those aspects. So for example, if sustainability is a big piece which L'Oreal is driving globally, so when we are also looking at some of those checks and balances in terms of our brand safety, we are looking at it, how our content is appearing. Even when we are creating our content, how we are creating that content. A lot of those pieces is something which we are consciously looking into it, and I can add upon it as we move along in our conversation.
Thank you so much, Sujay. And one very clear stark difference is like going back to the brand ethos and defining the way the brand is and then evolving it. Jolene, how do you see this? Like you are the custodian for so many brands when it comes to the paid media as well as the organic media deployment, right? Like how do you see this from a brand safety perspective in terms of what are some of the things that you do? What are some of the things when you have conversations with some of the advertising digital giants like a Google Meta equivalent? Like how do you maneuver some of these conversations to make the placement and as well as the brand suitability which Sujay spoke about? How do you make this, how do you land these things for your clients?
So I think starting off with brand safety, it's a very important aspect for a brand. You spend a lot of impressions across multiple platforms to make sure that your brand is seen in the right context. And it would take years for a brand to build that credibility. However, having your brand in the wrong space or in the wrong context as well is the kind of, the investments that you make actually start, hitting back to you. So when we have these discussions, it's just simple guidelines that we kind of follow. One is identify how you are really picking up these content pieces. So first, when we talk to these publishers, it's very important to make sure how you identify content which is brand unsafe. Second, in terms of if they have a strong process in place, which is blocking such content, or how do you kind of make good for this content, that's the most important step as well. And obviously making sure that you are able to track by putting third-party, trackers. So to make sure, to see the percentage of the impressions that are possibly not in the brand safe environment. So these are some quite simple steps, but in the entire ecosystem, it's the most important, because you would be probably one in the brand, in a space where you as a brand don't want to really be. And as, like I was saying, from a brand credibility standpoint that you've built your brand from, so it's not just about money, it is about the years of investments to build where you build the brand where you were really at.
Great. Essentially, for me, some of the key takeaways, this is what you said, is like it takes years to build the brand, but it like takes a minute to lose it in case you're not very clear about brand safety as well as brand suitability. And this is a question to all three of you, and Jolene, probably you can go first. And this is the key question which most of the advertisers keep coming back to, right? ये सब ठीक है, but धंधा लेके आएगा कि नहीं? I mean, what's the brand ROI if one were to indulge in things like brand safety, brand sustainability, so on and so forth? Like, how do you, what's your one-liner or a two-liner takeaway for the audience and for your clients that you normally advise on?
So your ROI would obviously be the impressions burnt on, on a brand safe environment, on the investments that you put in. I mean, you're actually losing a lot of it. So, and again, I bring back the whole point about brand values. So I look at ROI as whole, which is money plus values put together.
Sujay?
Yeah, I kind of agree to that. So there are two aspects of it, tangible and non-tangible. So one part is the entire, because the reputation of the brand is at stake. So that piece is very, very important, because you have done a significant amount of investment to drive a certain amount of imagery. You have invested for your brands to make it stand for something, and then suddenly, because of some brand safety issues, suddenly it becomes a PR nightmare for you. So that's a massive thing for you. So that's an avoidance which you manage. Then the another part is that, which is about, are these correct impressions? Are those bot traffics or not? In fact, I was just reading a report the very other day, and around 20 to 25% of the traffic, which is literally being driven from a lot of these ad networks and all, is bot traffic. It's technically a loss in your ad dollars. So if with these kind of brand safety mechanism, you can do away with those fake traffics, or even sometimes those impressions haven't happened. So the system might say that, hey, impression has happened, consumer has seen the ad, but that impression hasn't happened. So technically it's a ad dollar which is getting wasted. So even if you are like closing that 15-20% gap, technically it's the saving which you have done. So that is very much measurable. And then of course the non-measurable part of it, which is like saving you from any kind of PR nightmare.
Great point, Sujay. Especially I like the fact that what could be a new metric in terms of the ability to avoid a PR disaster equivalent kind of thing. That's a very, I'm not sure if there is a number equivalent to that, but that's a great thing that marketers can look for to see how they can manage that. And another interesting thing you spoke about is the ability to reduce the wastage, which is on an impression which is, say, like not brand safe or necessarily a bot kind of traffic. That money is money saved and deployed could have resulted in a far more better ROI. Now, Himanshu, can you throw some light on, particularly from a performance marketing and in the context of the health and healthcare category that you deal with, how does this ROI get measured?
Understood. So again, I'll give you a little longer answer to this. So at Apollo, there's one thing that we do almost every day at 9 a.m. in the morning. We calculate the number of lives that we saved the previous day. And especially for a healthcare brand like Apollo, what happens typically is we are either saving someone's life or probably reducing someone's suffering. You might probably have a headache, right? And you have just ordered a paracetamol from us. As simple as that. Our mandate is to somehow help you and reduce that pain suffering that you are facing. Now, on that entire ROAS side, there are two separate conversations as a brand that we need to look into. One is that entire aspect of being a very responsible healthcare brand that we are, sustainable growth, maintaining our margins, demand generation, all of that put together on one side. Now, what typically happens if you look at that picture as a whole, what happens is you're looking at a brand which is Apollo, 40-year-old, 90 million customers that we have served over the last 40 years. What typically happens is even if someone posts about us on social media, and our CMO, we keep receiving those stinkers on social media. I received my medicine 10 hours late, or I received my medicines in 2 days. Everywhere in any message that we receive, there's a tagline that we get. We did not expect this from a brand like Apollo. Now, as a brand, that is so crucial and critical to us because that is a trust that these people have put in us. So that's a big trust aspect that we carry as a brand. The second aspect to it is on the ROAS piece or ROI. ROI is extremely important, a lot of safety metrics across social display that we need to measure. But is that impression critical for us? Is that fraud critical for us? Yes. But probably trust and all of those factors we'll want to be present on inventories or ad inventories which are especially good where the good ROI is present. That's the whole piece of it. I think I'll just rush into whatever my statement is. But yeah, yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have heard there is only two provocative questions that we have at the end of the session. One is just ask yourself, are you following brand safety norms? And what are you doing to measure it? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, all of you, for taking this wonderful session. Now, I'll request our session chair, Mr. Ranganathan, to please felicitate all our speakers. And thank you so much for talking so amazingly in your session in such a short span of time. Once again, our sincere gratitude and apologies to you as well.